What if I told you that a single number, hidden at the end of your birth year, could hold a secret capable of revealing something you never dared imagine about yourself? You might think it impossible that a simple, often overlooked digit could have any significance, but it is precisely in this nearly invisible detail that Nikola Tesla, the man who saw beyond what the eye could see, would find a sign. Tesla believed that nothing in the universe happens by chance. For him, there were no coincidences, only vibratory laws disguised as chance. If every atom, every star, every thought possesses a frequency, why would the moment you were born, with all the details surrounding it, be merely a matter of luck? Think for a moment. You could have been born on any day, in any year, but you weren't. There was a single coordinate in time when your life began. And at that precise moment, like an invisible orchestra performing its symphony, the universe bestowed upon you a unique tone. This tone crystallized in seemingly banal details, including the last number of your birth year. How many times have you looked at this number without giving it meaning? How many times have you considered it just another bureaucratic record? Now imagine that this number is, in fact, a vibratory reflection of the essence that has accompanied your soul since your first breath. Tesla was obsessed with invisible patterns. He said that if we wanted to understand the universe, we should think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. He didn't say this as a poetic metaphor, but as a result of entire nights spent walking alone through the streets of New York, observing the invisible. For him, reality wasn't made solely of matter, it was made of hidden rhythms. What we call chance was, for Tesla, merely a synchronicity we hadn't yet learned to decipher. If even the movements of the planets obey perfect equations, why wouldn't the moment you were born, and the number that marks it, also obey a law? This idea may seem uncomfortable. After all, if a number can carry such profound meaning, where is freedom? Are we trapped by a destiny written in mathematical symbols? Or is understanding this number actually the key to freeing ourselves from unconscious patterns that govern us without us realizing it? Herein arises the first conflict. The rational mind resists, calling it coincidence, trying to reduce everything to chance. But somewhere deeper, the heart senses a hidden order. Have you ever felt that certain patterns repeat themselves in your life, as if similar situations recur, demanding new responses from you? This would not be just a succession of random events, but echoes of a rhythm that vibrates from the beginning, the rhythm of your number. Tesla had a rare sensitivity to these hidden symphonies. He himself said that his mind functioned like an antenna, capturing signals that didn't come from him, but through him. And perhaps you too, without realizing it, are tuned to a similar frequency, the frequency marked by the last digit of your birth. This number isn't a fixed seal that imprisons. It's more like a musical note that resonates within you. Depending on how you recognize and use it, it can become both a prison and a liberation. Imagine an out-of-tune instrument. The note is the same, but the sound generates discomfort. When aligned, however, the same instrument produces harmony. Your number works like this. Either you live in conflict with it, or you learn to transform its vibration into consciousness. But how can we believe this if we've spent our entire lives viewing numbers as mere tools? Look around you. Numbers determine times, dates, contracts, passwords. We live surrounded by them, but we rarely ask ourselves if there's anything beyond their practical utility. Tesla dared to ask himself. When he spoke of the triad of 3, 6, and 9 as keys to the universe, he wasn't just suggesting mathematical curiosities, but asserting that the very fabric of reality is made of numerical resonances. If seemingly neutral numbers hold so much power, what message could be hidden in the number that has accompanied your identity since birth? You might wonder, what if it's just an illusion? What if this whole vibration thing is just a metaphor? The curious thing is that even modern science confirms that everything in the universe vibrates. From the string of a violin to the movement of an electron, nothing is still. If everything vibrates, including you, then it's not strange to imagine that the exact moment of your birth imprinted a unique vibration, reflected even in that detail we call the last digit of the year. This is the language of the universe, details so subtle that only the attentive perceive them. Tesla was never content with superficial explanations. He questioned even the obvious. When everyone saw only electricity, he saw vibrational patterns that could be transmitted wirelessly. When everyone saw only inventions, he saw bridges to a future where humanity could live in harmony, with the energy of the cosmos. This same perspective invites you to reconsider. Is your final number truly a coincidence, or is it a vibrational reflection of your own essence? Here arises another inevitable question. If this is true, then each of us is born with a unique energetic signature. What happens when we ignore this signature? Perhaps we spend our lives repeating patterns, stumbling over the same mistakes, never realizing there was a hidden map in our hands. How many live and die without ever wondering if life could have been guided by something greater? And how many are still willing to listen to the silent music that pulses behind each number? Perhaps you remember times when you asked yourself, why do I always attract the same challenges? Why do certain experiences seem inevitable? For Tesla, the answer lies in the vibratory field that accompanies us. The last number of your birth year isn't the sole cause of these events, but rather a symbolic reflection of the frequency that vibrates within you. Understanding this number is like looking into a hidden mirror. In it, you see not only your current image, but the contours of patterns that can shape your entire history. And this is where the question becomes even more provocative. What will you do with this information? Will you ignore it out of curiosity, or will you accept it as an invitation to a deeper investigation into yourself? Tesla would say that those who don't understand the rhythms that govern them become their prisoners, but those who recognize them gain the freedom to create. This is the difference between living swept along by the current or learning to navigate it. Now imagine that this number is, in fact, your first note, a note that continues to resonate, even if you've never paid attention. It influences the way you love, the way you face crises, the way you relate to the world. It's not a fixed destiny, but a constant invitation. And if you decide to listen to it, you might discover that you were never just a spectator of life, but a composer capable of shaping your own melody. Tesla's great provocation is this: would you rather live as if everything were coincidence, or would you dare believe there's a secret order waiting to be deciphered? When you look at the last digit of your birth, you're not just looking at a number, you're looking at a door that can lead you to understanding not only who you are, but also what role you play in this universal symphony. And that's precisely why the next step on our journey will be inevitable, delving into this secret language of numbers that Tesla saw as keys to the cosmos. Because if until now we've only been talking about an enigma, what comes next could transform that enigma and revelation. Imagine for a moment that you could see the world as Nikola Tesla did, not just the visible things, but the invisible patterns that underpin everything. For him, nothing was still, nothing was truly solid. Everything, absolutely everything, vibrated. The thoughts that cross your mind at this moment, the beating of your heart, the lamp that illuminates the room, even the memories you hold in silence, everything is vibration. And in this vision, even the last number of your birth year becomes something much greater than a detail written on a document. It becomes a symbolic reflection of a rhythm that vibrates within you, and that, if ignored, can become an enigma that silently shapes your choices and repeats stories you believe to be coincidences. Tesla used to say that if we wanted to understand the secrets of the universe, we should think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. This phrase seems simple, but when taken seriously, it changes everything. Think of a radio. You don't see the waves traveling through the air, but they're there, invisible, filling the space between you and the antenna. When you turn the dial, one station emerges clearly, while all the others remain silent, even though they're still there. This is how it works with numbers too. The last digit of your birth year acts like an invisible station. It's not the only frequency there is, but it's the one that resonates with you from day one. As long as you live, this vibration will continue to play your music, whether you consciously hear it or not. Perhaps you've felt this subtly, without ever naming it. Have you ever noticed how certain experiences seem to keep coming back? A person who suddenly repeats themselves in different faces throughout your life. A kind of challenge that always returns in new forms, as if the universe were testing your response. A feeling of being trapped in a cycle no one else notices. Tesla would say these patterns are not the result of chance, but of resonance. You vibrate at a certain frequency, and that which shares the same nature finds its way to you. It's not magic, it's attunement. Think of something every day. Imagine someone born in a year ending in the number 1. From an early age, this person feels the urge to break new ground, to seek independence, to create something uniquely theirs. It could be a child never content to repeat what others do, always inventing new ways to play. As they grow, this same drive transforms into a desire to lead, to undertake, to be the first to achieve what no one else has dared to attempt. But along with this energy also comes conflict. They often feel alone, misunderstood, as if the world doesn't follow their vision. This generates frustration, isolation, and sometimes even a feeling of carrying too much weight. Is it just a coincidence that so many similar stories appear in people marked by this same number? For Tesla, no, it's pure resonance. Now consider the opposite. Someone born in a year ending in 2. Instead of feeling a calling to excel, this person carries within them a deep need for harmony. From a young age, they've been the one trying to calm arguments between peers, preferring to avoid arguments, always seeking to reconcile. Over the course of their life, they become the go-to person when they need someone who understands different sides of an issue. But the conflict here is different. Often, to maintain the peace, they sacrifice their own will. They say yes when they meant no, and then feel exhausted from having given in too much. Is it really a coincidence that so many born under this number report similar dilemmas? Tesla believed these signs were more than personal stories. They were expressions of universal frequencies. When he said numbers were alive, he wasn't speaking metaphorically. For him, each number was like a symbol charged with energy, a note on an infinite scale. Just as a melody can evoke joy or sadness, each number activates emotional and psychological predispositions within us. The last digit of your birth year is like a vibrational signature, something that echoes throughout your entire life. You can choose to ignore this sound and live in the noise, or you can learn to listen to it and discover how it expresses itself in every detail of your life. Consider another scene, a woman born in a year ending in 0. From an early age, everyone describes her as stable, reliable, and a reassurance to others. She's the one who keeps calm when everyone else is panicking, the one who supports her family in difficult times. Her presence is like an anchor, but deep down she feels a conflict. Her search for stability often traps her in routines, in fears of change, in resistance to the unexpected. She has difficulty taking risks, even when her heart urges for novelty. For Tesla, this wouldn't be a flaw, but the natural echo of 0. The force of the void that contains everything, but which also needs to learn to open itself to movement. These examples show that number isn't a fixed destiny, but symbolic language. It's as if each person carries their own station, a background melody that repeats in different tones and situations. And the question that arises is inevitable. If this melody is always present, what happens when we decide to ignore it? We live in dissonance. Sound becomes noise, painful repetition, cycles that drag on. But when we recognize it, when we tune in, it becomes a guide, an opportunity to understand our strengths and our limits. Tesla knew this intuitively. He spent hours walking alone, not just observing the physical world, but trying to hear what he called the music of the universe. For him, numbers were not just tools of calculation, but notes in this grand symphony. When he said that the numbers 3, 6, and 9 were cosmic keys, he was suggesting an underlying order to everything, an invisible mathematics that united the micro and the macro. If he saw such mystery in these numbers, how could he not also see meaning in the one that has accompanied his own life since day one? And here comes the real suspense. If the last digit of your birth year carries within it a vibrational message, what exactly is it trying to tell you? Is it simply a reflection of your personality? Is it a map of your deepest challenges? Or is it a calling, a kind of secret password that, when deciphered, can reveal paths you never imagined? Tesla believed that freedom lies not in escaping the laws of the universe, but in understanding them. Those who ignore the rhythms that govern it become prisoners. Those who understand them can use them to their advantage. This insight transforms the number into something much greater. Not a sentence, but an invitation. When you understand the vibration that accompanies you, you can choose how to dance with it, whether you will allow it to imprison you in repetitions or transform it into a source of consciousness and power. Perhaps you remember a time in your life when everything seemed to conspire against you, when the same problems kept recurring in different places, as if the universe were insistently showing you something. Perhaps you asked yourself, why does this always happen to me? The answer may lie in the fact that you were living out of sync with your frequency. What if instead, you had stopped to listen, to recognize the pattern? perhaps you would have discovered that it wasn't a punishment, but an invitation to transformation. Throughout his life, Tesla was ridiculed, discredited, and isolated, but he never stopped believing that the universe spoke in a language few dared to hear. His courage in following this intuition left us with inventions that changed the world. And perhaps that same courage is what you need now, to look at the last number of your birth year and ask yourself not only what it means, but how it has shaped your life thus far. If we've discussed the enigma surrounding this number so far, the next step is inevitable, delving into the first numerical archetypes, those Tesla saw as the foundations of the cosmos. 0, 1, 2. The origin of the nothing that contains everything, the spark that creates and the polarity that balances. Each of them carries an existential lesson. Each is a door. But the question is, when you reach these doors, will you have the courage to walk through them? 0 has always been seen as nothingness, a void, a blank space, an absence. But for Nikola Tesla, this nothingness was not absence, but rather the most powerful presence of all, the invisible field that contains everything before it manifests. 0, in this view, is neither the end nor the beginning, but the silence between two notes that allows music to exist. Imagine for a moment that you were born in a year, ending in 0. What kind of energy rests within you? It is the energy of fertile silence, of magnetic stability, of the ability to sustain structures, even when everything around seems to dissolve. But along with this strength arises the dilemma. To what extent does keeping things stable not become resistance to the unexpected? How many opportunities have you let pass you by for fear of losing your footing? Tesla, on his long nighttime walks, reflected on the nature of this void. He believed that even the space between atoms vibrated silently, as if an inaudible symphony sustained each form. 0 for him was the symbol of this space, but if the void vibrates, it also moves. The question is, have you allowed the emptiness in your life to be fertile, or have you treated silence merely as absence, as paralysis? How many times have you sought to fill every moment with noise, commitments, and distractions, without realizing that what you really needed was to hear the music that only reveals itself in silence? 0 is stable, but it can also become a prison. It's the solid rock on which to build, but also the prison that prevents movement. How do we balance these poles? Perhaps the answer lies in realizing that the true power of 0 lies not in keeping everything still, but in allowing new possibilities to emerge from stillness. Tesla understood this when he said that balance is only real when there is movement. Have you ever wondered if your quest for security isn't, deep down, a fear disguised as stability? The number 1, on the other hand, explodes like the first spark. It doesn't wait, it creates. It's the pioneer who launches forth, even without knowing exactly what he'll find. Tesla lived under the influence of this number throughout his life. He wasn't content to repeat what had already been done. He always needed to go one step further, see what no one else saw, dare what no one else dared. But the number 1 also carries its burden, the loneliness of the pioneer, the incomprehension of those who don't see his vision. How many times have you felt the urge to blaze a new trail, but held back for fear of not being understood? How many ideas have died within you because they found no support? The impulse of the individual is for affirmation, autonomy, and independence. But this impulse, when taken to extremes, creates a kind of island. The pioneer becomes lonely, believing they can only advance alone. Tesla experienced this burden firsthand. He was a visionary, but also misunderstood. He created works that changed the world, but paid the price of exclusion and ridicule. How many of us do the same, isolating ourselves in our convictions, believing no one could understand our journey? Does the path of leadership truly have to be a solitary one, or is this just a myth we repeat without question? The one teaches us about the courage to take the first step, but also about the need to include others on the path. A single spark illuminates, but quickly fades. Several together can set an entire city ablaze. Perhaps you need to ask yourself, have you been using your spark only to illuminate yourself, or have you found a way to light the path for others as well? 2 emerges as a counterpoint. If 1 seeks to assert itself, 2 seeks to connect. It is the number of duality, of the polarity that Tesla so admired in the electrical field. Positive and negative, attraction and repulsion, light and shadow. Without opposite poles, there is no movement. Energy only circulates because there is difference, tension, and contrast. 2 represents this principle in human life, the need to find harmony between opposing forces. Those born under the number 2 often feel this deep down. They're the kind of person who always seeks to reconcile, who struggles with conflict, who feels better when the environment around them is balanced. But this pursuit also exacts a price. How many times have you said yes just to avoid a fight, even when your will screamed no? How many times have you sacrificed your own needs to avoid displeasing someone? This is the shadow of 2, confusing harmony with submission, believing that peace only exists when we nullify ourselves. Tesla saw the electric field as the perfect lesson. The poles don't cancel each other out, they coexist. The tension between them isn't destructive, it's creative. Without it, there would be no light. The same applies to life. True balance isn't born when one side disappears, but when both sides recognize each other. Have you ever wondered if your pursuit of harmony is genuine or just a way to avoid conflict? Could the peace you seek outside yourself actually be a reflection of the peace you haven't yet found within? 0, 1, and 2 aren't just numbers. They are existential principles: fertile silence, the creative spark, and harmonic tension. Each represents a possibility, a lesson, a challenge. If 0 asks us to learn to trust the void, 1 demands the courage to create, and 2 invites us to integrate opposites without losing ourselves. Which of these principles resonates most strongly in your life? Tesla believed that understanding these vibrations was more than curiosity. It was understanding the language through which the universe expresses itself. Those who refuse to listen to this language end up repeating unconscious patterns, trapped in cycles they don't understand. Those who learn to listen discover a new form of freedom, not the absence of laws, but the awareness of them. Have you ever wondered how many of your current conflicts are nothing more than repetitions of a vibratory pattern you haven't yet recognized? The fascinating thing is that each person, when looking at the last number of their birth year, finds there not just information, but a mirror. The number shows both your strength and your vulnerability. It reveals both your most powerful qualities and what can become your greatest obstacle. Can you see this in your life? Can you see where your search for security has become a prison, where your courage has become isolation, where your quest for harmony has become annihilation? These questions don't have ready-made answers. They are invitations. Invitations to see that each number doesn't define your destiny, but offers a lens through which to better understand yourself. Tesla would remind us that true slavery is living without awareness of the forces that move us. But true freedom arises when we recognize these forces and choose how to dance with them. Now consider, if even 0, 1, and 2, numbers that seem so simple, carry such profound meanings, what happens when we move on to numbers that carry within them the power of creation, structure, and freedom? What new lessons await us as we cross this next portal? 3 has always held a mysterious allure. For Nikola Tesla, it was more than a number. It was the key to the universe. He believed that whoever understood the meaning of 3, 6, and 9 would gain access to the hidden code that underpins all reality. This vision didn't arise out of thin air. Ancient civilizations already intuited the power of 3. 3 phases of time, past, present, and future. 3 fundamental dimensions, height, width, and depth. 3 basic elements of life, birth, growth, and death. The number 3 is present in almost all belief systems and philosophies, as if it were a universal reminder that life always expresses itself in threefold cycles. When someone is born in a year that ends in 3, they carry within them this creative energy. It's not just creativity in the artistic sense, but the ability to see connections where others see only fragments. It's that child who turns a box into a castle, who invents stories out of boredom, who draws paths where there was no road. But this same gift brings with it a dilemma: excessive self-criticism. The creator, while creating beauty, finds themselves imprisoned by the fear of not being enough. How many artists have abandoned works because they felt they weren't yet perfect? How many brilliant ideas never saw the light of day because their creators deemed them premature? Tesla knew this burden well. Before building his inventions, he visualized them in his mind with such detailed precision that he could test them in his mind. It was an extraordinary, but also exhausting process. He only accepted bringing to reality what had already been mentally tested in every aspect. Imagine living like this, your mind full of possibilities, but your heart trapped in the demand for perfection. How many of us do the same on a smaller scale, failing to act because we believe we're not yet ready? Interestingly, current research shows that this trait is common among highly creative people. Psychology studies indicate that creative individuals have higher rates of anxiety and self-criticism, precisely because they perceive nuances that others miss. Seeing too much can be a gift, but also a burden. Have you ever wondered if you've been stifling your own creativity out of fear of being imperfect? 4 arrives to provide a counterpoint. If 3 represents imagination in motion, 4 represents the structure that shapes what was once merely an idea. It's the number of the builder, the disciplined, the architect of reality. When someone is born in a year ending in 4, they carry this energy of solidity and reliability. They are the person who knows how to organize, who creates systems, who brings order to chaos. But with strength comes the risk of excess. Just as a bridge can collapse if it's too inflexible in the face of the winds, those who vibrate with 4 can fall into the trap of rigidity. Tesla had an ambiguous relationship with this number. Although he was a visionary, he had almost obsessive habits reminiscent of the number 4. He calculated proportions before entering buildings, avoided places that didn't follow harmonious numerical patterns, and maintained meticulous rituals in his daily life. This aspect gave him clarity and focus, but also limited his spontaneity. How many times in life have you tried to control everything, only to find that, even so, the unexpected found a loophole? The number 4 teaches us the importance of building, but also the need for flexibility. Recent research shows how our minds naturally seek patterns of 4 to organize the world. The 4 cardinal directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 elements. This number brings security, but it can also imprison. A curious statistic indicates that many people who identify as perfectionists experience heightened anxiety symptoms, precisely because they can't stand it when life gets out of control. Have you also been trying to maintain overly rigid structures, believing they provide security? And then comes the number 5, perhaps the most restless of all. The number 5 vibrates like the wind, free, unstable, unpredictable. Those born in a year ending in 5 carry the impulse to explore, to experiment, to refuse to accept the obvious. They are the traveler, the curious, the one who can't stand the idea of always living in the same place. Since childhood, they have demonstrated difficulty adapting to rigid routines. They need change, they need to know, they need to feel that the horizon is never wide enough. This energy, when used well, generates discoveries, innovations, and transformations. But when misdirected, it becomes dispersion, an inability to delve deeper into anything. Tesla also had this drive. His mind was restless, always seeking more. He often worked himself to exhaustion, sleeping little, obsessed with finding something new. His genius was fueled by this inner fire, but it also paid the price: poor health, isolation, and misunderstanding. How many of us have experienced this dilemma on a smaller scale? The desire to experience everything, to change constantly, but at the same time the feeling of never settling down. Have you ever wondered if your quest for freedom is truly an authentic expression, or just a disguised escape? The number 5 is also fascinating from a behavioral science perspective. Research indicates that younger generations, especially those who grew up with an abundance of choices, experience higher levels of anxiety. The more possibilities, the greater the difficulty in deciding. This is the dilemma of the number 5. When everything is possible, nothing is achieved. It's the infinite choice syndrome. Have you ever felt this? The feeling that by choosing one path you lose all the others and thus become paralyzed. The curious thing is that these 3 numbers, 3, 4, and 5, form a powerful triangle. They represent the triad of expression, structure, and freedom. The creator, the builder, and the explorer. Each brings unique gifts, but also hidden challenges. The creator must learn to accept imperfection. The builder must learn to yield to the unexpected. The explorer must learn to transform freedom into depth. And even if you weren't born under these numbers, at some point in your life, you will be called to experience these energies. Who hasn't needed to create something new? Who hasn't needed to organize their life? Who hasn't felt the call of freedom? These energies are not exclusive, but archetypes that manifest in all of us. However, those who carry a 3, 4, or 5 as their last birth digit feel this calling with special intensity, almost like destiny. And here a crucial question arises. Have you been living in tune with this vibration? Or have you been trying to silence it? An unexpected fact may shed light on this reflection. Studies show that many people who excel in creative fields, such as music, art, and literature, were born in years ending in 3. This may be just a statistical coincidence, but it could also be an indication of how the vibrational archetype of 3 manifests itself collectively. Similarly, many leaders of large organizations and engineers were born in years ending in 4, while explorers, travelers, and innovators often carry a 5 in their final year. The pattern is clear to see, but how many have the courage to recognize it? Tesla believed these patterns were not illusions, but expressions of cosmic mathematics. For him, understanding the vibration of each number was like understanding a part of universal music. What would happen if you began to view your number not as a curiosity, but as a personal code? Would you discover that your entire life was already resonating with this pattern? From the simplest gestures to the boldest decisions. Think about your routine. 3 can appear when you feel the urge to create something, but are held back by fear of judgment. 4 can emerge when you organize everything around you, but become irritated when something gets out of your control. 5 can manifest when you feel the urge to change everything, to abandon what you've already built, only to start over somewhere else. These situations seem common, but they are reflections of vibrational archetypes that shape the human experience. And the final question is this: to what extent are you aware of the number vibrating in your life? Are your creativity, discipline, or freedom being used as forces for growth, or are they becoming invisible prisons? Perhaps it's time to ask yourself not only what your number is, but how you've been dancing with it. If the numbers 3, 4, and 5 teach us about expression, structure, and movement, what about those that delve even deeper into the human soul? What happens when vibration translates into care, spiritual seeking, and leadership power? That will be the next revelation. 6 emerges as a vibration that directly touches the human heart. If the previous numbers spoke of creation, structure, and freedom, 6 speaks of care, compassion, and surrender. Nikola Tesla, in his own life, carried this mark. His dream of offering free energy to all humanity was not just a scientific project, but an act of care on a global scale. Those born in a year ending in 6 often carry this same inclination, the almost instinctive need to support others, to be the invisible pillar that sustains family, friends, and community. They are the person everyone turns to when they need help, the one whose presence comforts and conveys security, even in the midst of chaos. But this gift brings with it a profound dilemma. The caregiver often forgets themselves. How many times have you given so much that you feel empty? How many times has your generosity become a burden because no one realized how much you too needed to be cared for? Recent psychology studies show that people with strong empathy are at greater risk of developing anxiety and emotional burnout. This happens because they absorb others' pain as if it were their own. This is the shadow of the 6, compassion that, when unbalanced, turns into self-cancellation. Have you ever wondered if your kindness is being used as a strength or a weakness? Tesla understood that energy cannot be accumulated without circulation. The same goes for caring. There's no point in offering everything if there's no return flow. Love only sustains itself when it flows in both directions. The challenge of the 6 is to learn that caring for others doesn't mean abandoning oneself. Imagine a mother who spends her entire life dedicated to her children. She forgets herself, her dreams, her desires. Years later, when they grow up and leave, she finds herself exhausted and without identity. The number 6 calls for the exact opposite, that the act of caring also be an opportunity to nourish oneself. Tesla, in his obsession with serving humanity, often neglected his health, his social life, his own stability. It's as if the mission had consumed him. Can you see where the same thing is happening in your life, where compassion has become a silent burden? 7, in turn, opens a completely different dimension. It is the number of spiritual seeking, of depth, of investigation of the invisible. Throughout history, 7 has always been associated with the sacred. 7 days of creation, 7 musical notes, 7 colors of the spectrum, 7 chakras. Tesla, who lived immersed in nocturnal contemplation, represented the essence of this vibration. He ceaselessly sought answers that no one else dared seek. While others were content with practical explanations, he wanted to penetrate the mystery. Those born in a year ending in 7 often carry this same impulse, the desire to understand more, to look beyond the obvious. to ask questions that are uncomfortable because they break the surface of certainties. But the number 7 brings with it another dilemma: the seeker's loneliness. These people often feel out of place, as if they don't belong in the world around them. They wonder why others seem satisfied with simple answers, while within them grows a restlessness that never fades. Tesla experienced exactly this. He spent hours isolated, capturing ideas as if they were signals from another dimension. He was misunderstood, ridiculed, considered eccentric. Yet it was precisely in this solitude that his greatest discoveries emerged. Have you ever felt this way? As if your mind were tuned to a station others couldn't hear? Interestingly, research shows that people with high intellectual curiosity are also more likely to feel socially isolated. Profoundness, when not shared, creates invisible walls. But the true challenge of the 7 isn't just searching, it's learning to translate and share what they find. Tesla knew this. He wasn't content with intuition. He needed to show the world what he saw. He often failed to be understood, but even so, he left seeds that still germinate today. The 7 is called to this: transform solitary searching into collective contribution. Ask yourself, have you been keeping your discoveries to yourself, or do you have the courage to share them, even at the risk of not being understood? And so we come to 8, the vibration of strength, achievement, and leadership. 8 is the number that resembles infinity lying down, a symbol of cycles that never end. It represents the power to transform ideas into concrete achievements. Those born in a year ending in 8 often feel within themselves this natural leadership energy, the ambition to build something great, to occupy spaces of influence. But here too lies a risk: the confusion between power and tyranny. Tesla knew this dilemma firsthand. His desire was to use science to liberate, but he faced men who saw power only as a tool for enrichment and domination. The number 8 carries this weight: the need to choose whether to use one's strength to serve or to dominate. Leadership data shows that many leaders fail not because of a lack of competence, but because of an inability to balance authority with humanity. 8, when it doesn't find this balance, can turn into arrogance, an obsession with control and destruction. But when this energy is well directed, it becomes a transformative force. Tesla didn't seek power for himself, but dreamed of a world where energy would be abundant and accessible to all. His 8 was channeled to serve, not to aggrandize himself. Have you ever reflected on how you use your power? Is your ambition serving the collective, or merely your own vanity? 6, 7, and 8, together, represent 3 profound layers of the human experience: the love that cares, the mind that seeks, and the strength that leads. These are archetypes that transcend the individual and touch the essence of humanity. Caring is essential, but without self-knowledge, it becomes sacrifice. Seeking is fundamental, but without sharing it becomes isolation. Leadership is necessary, but without awareness, it becomes tyranny. Can you see how these dilemmas reflect on your life? When do you give too much and lose yourself? In what situations do you isolate yourself for fear of not being understood? Where does your strength turn into excessive control? Tesla believed that these numbers were not mere symbols, but expressions of universal laws. For him, living without understanding them was like trying to use a complex machine without knowing how it works. You might be able to make it work instinctively, but sooner or later you lose yourself in its own mechanisms. And isn't that what happens when we live without awareness of our own patterns? We repeat mistakes, we wear ourselves out, we suffer without knowing exactly why. But when we understand the hidden logic, we gain clarity. The question is, are you willing to look at your number as a guide, rather than treating it as a meaningless coincidence? Imagine a line connecting these 3 numbers. 6 confronts you with the need to love and be loved without sacrificing yourself. 7 opens the door to the search for meaning and depth. 8 demands that you learn to handle power responsibly. This path isn't just theoretical, it's a real one that many walk without realizing it. The caregiver who gets lost in excess and needs to rediscover themselves. The seeker who isolates themselves and needs to learn to share. The leader who becomes corrupt and needs to rescue humanity. Have you ever wondered where your life is right now? These numbers also reflect inevitable phases of existence. There are times when we need to care more, times when we need to seek more, and times when we need to lead. The problem is when we get stuck in just one of these phases. Tesla, throughout his career, lived through them all. He was the caretaker of humanity, offering his genius as a gift. He was the seeker, delving into mysteries no one else dared to investigate. And he was the visionary leader, capable of inspiring entire generations. But he also experienced the dilemmas of each stage: personal sacrifice, the loneliness of the search, and the struggle against powers greater than himself. Can you see how your own life is also permeated by these energies? Perhaps you're currently in a 6-number moment, caring for everyone and forgetting about yourself. Or perhaps you're in a 7-number moment, immersed in deep questions that distance you from others. Or perhaps you're in an 8-number moment, grappling with responsibilities, choices, and powers that test your ethics. The important thing isn't which number you're in, but whether you're aware of what it asks of you. In the end, Tesla's lesson remains: those who ignore the rhythms of the universe become their prisoners. Those who understand them gain freedom. 6 calls for balance in love. 7 calls for courage in the search. 8 calls for awareness in power. These are invitations, not sentences. The choice of how to respond to each of them is yours. And if we've talked so far about care, search, and leadership, there's one final portal to cross. A number that closes the cycle, but at the same time opens the door to something greater. 9, the number of universal compassion, the call to transcend the limits of the self and embrace the totality of us. Are you ready to discover what it means to carry this vibration? 9 is not just a number. It is the end of one cycle and, at the same time, the beginning of another. Nikola Tesla said that every ending contains within itself the seed of a new beginning. And this is what 9 shows us. It is the archetype of universal compassion, of surrender that goes beyond self-interest, of the realization that we exist not only to satisfy individual desires, but to become a conscious part of something greater. If so far we have spoken of care, pursuit, and leadership, 9 is the synthesis that puts everything into perspective. It reminds us that the true meaning of life lies not only in what we accumulate or achieve, but in how much we can transcend the self to embrace the whole. Those born in a year ending in 9 often feel this calling intensely. From an early age, they carry the feeling that they cannot live solely for themselves. They are the kind of children who worry when they see someone suffering, who feel the pain of others as if it were their own. As they grow, this feeling transforms into a desire to change the world, to fight for greater causes, to transform the reality around them. But along with this impulse comes a burden, the weight of wanting to do more than is possible. How many of us have been frustrated by the realization that the world's problems are too big to solve alone? How many times have we felt that our efforts are insignificant in the face of so much injustice? 9 is powerful, but it can also be cruel if not understood. Its risk is excessive idealization, the desire to save everything and everyone, and frustration in the face of limitations. Tesla lived this tension. He dreamed of offering free and abundant energy to all humanity, but faced barriers of economic and political interest. His vision was grand, but its realization was interrupted by forces greater than himself. Still, his seed remained. Today, many of the technologies we use are fruits of the soil he prepared. 9 teaches us precisely this, that we don't need to change the entire world alone, but that every step, every action, every seed sown is already part of a greater transformation. And here arises the big question: how to apply this teaching in practice? How to transform the energy of the 9 into something that isn't just a dream or frustration, but concrete action? The answer lies in 3 simple but powerful steps: awareness, integration, and practice. The first is awareness. This means recognizing the number vibrating within you and noticing how it's already acting in your life. Look back and observe the recurring patterns. Where have you noticed your compassion becoming excessive? Where have your ideals gone beyond what was possible and ended up causing fatigue or discouragement? Where have you been able to transform pain into strength and inspire others with your vision? Without this awareness, you will continue to live automatically, believing that situations happen by chance. Awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, you see what was always there. The second stage is integration. It's not enough to simply know you carry the energy of the number 9. You must accept it and integrate it in a balanced way. This means understanding that true compassion isn't just about giving, but also receiving. that fighting for a cause isn't about self-destruction, but about finding sustainable ways to act. Tesla, with all his genius, showed the bright and dark sides of this process. He gave himself to the point of losing his own stability, but also left legacies that transformed generations. Integration requires you to find your balance. How far can you give without nullifying yourself? How far can you dream without becoming frustrated? The third step is practice. The number 9 invites us to transform ideals into actions, not to remain merely in the realm of intentions. And this doesn't necessarily mean doing something grand. On the contrary, the greatness of the number 9 lies in the small acts that, together, create profound change. It's when you decide to listen to someone who needs attention. It's when you transform your indignation into community action. It's when you consciously choose to make your daily choices reflect the world you want to see. You don't need to save the whole world, but you can save a piece of it every day. And ultimately, isn't that what matters? A recent study showed that small acts of compassion, like helping a stranger, offering a genuine compliment, or taking a few minutes to listen, have such a powerful psychological impact that they increase the well-being not only of the recipient, but also of the giver. This means that by acting in tune with your vibration, you not only contribute to the collective, but also strengthen yourself. It's a two-way street. 9s don't thrive in isolation. They thrive in connection. Now think about how this can directly apply to your life. Maybe your number is 9, or maybe not. But at some point, we are all called to live this energy. When we care for someone beyond ourselves, when we seek something greater, when we lead with awareness, we inevitably reach the point where we need to embrace humanity as a whole. Ask yourself, what small actions can you take today that resonate with this calling? What is within your reach right now? It doesn't matter if it's simple or discreet. It matters that it's true. Tesla believed that humankind's greatest prison was living without awareness of the rhythms that govern it. By recognizing the number that vibrates within you, accepting it, and acting in tune with it, you cease to be a prisoner and become a creator. 9 reminds you that every ending is also a beginning. The cycle of your life doesn't end with a victory or a loss, but is renewed in every action you choose to take. The true secret is not waiting for the world to change, but changing yourself so you can then influence the world. Perhaps you're now wondering, how can I turn all this into consistent practice? The answer is to choose a simple but consistent plan. Write down 3 things on a piece of paper. A pattern you've noticed in your life, a way to integrate that pattern without guilt, and a practical action you can take today. For example, if you notice that you always overgive, write down that pattern. Then, write down a way to integrate it, like learning to say no when necessary. And finally, decide on a practical action, setting aside an hour of your day just for yourself, guilt-free. This may seem small, but that's exactly how transformation happens, with repeated gestures that, over time, reconfigure your entire life. This is the final invitation of the 9, to transform compassion into movement, dreams into practice, ideals into reality. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment. The moment is now. Every breath you take is an opportunity to align your life with the vibration that pulses within you. Every choice, no matter how small, is a way of saying to the universe, I am conscious, I am awake, I am ready to live in harmony with my purpose. And so we reach the point where reflection meets action. If this content touched you, don't let it fade away as just another idea among many. Turn it into practice. Write about what you discovered. Share your experience, even anonymously. Leave a comment about how you perceive the number vibrating in your life, what challenges it presents, and what strengths you've already recognized. This sharing isn't just yours. It's a link that helps build a network of consciousness, where each voice strengthens the other. If this video brought you clarity, inspiration, or even unease, subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with us. Hit the bell so you don't miss future content, as each one is a piece of this larger puzzle we're putting together. Leave your like so this message reaches more people who, like you, feel there's something beyond what meets the eye. And above all, share your questions, stories, and discoveries in the comments. It doesn't matter if you want to write your name or remain anonymous. What matters is participating, because every word shared becomes part of this collective symphony that expands our consciousness. Ultimately, Tesla always believed that the future belongs to those who understand the language of energy, frequency, and vibration. Today, you've taken a step in that direction. Now it's your turn to choose. Will you let this knowledge remain merely a curiosity? Or will you transform it into a living practice that changes your life and the lives of those around you?